Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Tonight we've got a great guest. But if you enjoy our content, please support us by clicking the subscribe button just in the right corner of your screen at the bottom there. We'd appreciate your support. Anyway, on with our guest tonight. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have the great Tim Abbott. Tim has been aware of the spirit world from a very early age. And at the age of 19, he embarked on his journey of development and has been studying mediumship for over 40 years now. Tim has become known as one of Britain's most evidential platform mediums. He prides himself on being a modern practical tutor. In recent years, Tim has achieved diplomas in both demonstrating and teaching platform mediumship. His standard and work style find him in great demand worldwide in countries such as Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, Canada, and many more. Tim's teaching style encourages the approach that it is natural to have the depth of evidence and presence of spirit in all aspects of your mediumship. Tim believes that evidence is an expression of the intelligence of spirit. He encourages all his students to have this as part of their own mediumship. And welcome, Tim, to Spiritual Talk. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Always a joy to be with you. Any opportunity for mediumship and spirit, I'll be there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, you're in the right place. You're in absolutely the right place.
Absolutely.
But we always ask our guests a little bit about themselves before we start talking about mediumship and our experiences. And I know we touched on it on the introduction. You started at a very early age. How was that for you?
So, thinking if you can hear my clock in the background there. The chimes will stop any moment now. Sadly, I come from a very dysfunctional family, and I spent from the age of 4 to 11 in a children's home. Some of your subscribers will know it as maybe an orphanage.
Yeah.
And I had friends who were not of the physical world, to the point where the people who used to run the children's home sent me to see a psychiatrist, and I only had to go once because he sent me back saying, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with this boy." I was 7 at that point, and I have memories of interacting with the spirit from about the age of 7. If I did before or not, I don't know. By the age of 11, I returned back to my mother in London and with my siblings. And my sister Susan, who I love dearly, my oldest sister, used to parade me. She used to bring her friends around to the house, and I'd be maybe 12 or 13, and she'd get me to do mediumship for them, not really realising what I was doing. I remember one particular incident when she walked through the door with a male friend of hers, and again I was probably 13, and I spoke to him by using his nickname, which very few people knew. And he said to me, to his 13-year-old boy, "How on earth do you know my nickname?" I said, "Well, this old lady's telling me your nickname." And, they used to be like that. So my sister Sue used to parade me like some kind of freak. But I came from a spiritualist family, you see, so it was the norm. It really was the norm. I sat in 3 circles, but I have to be honest, and I don't recommend your subscribers do this, but I sat in 3 circles, each circle for about 6 weeks. Became very disillusioned with either the teacher of the circle or the way it was going, the philosophy of the circle. And I went home one day, looked up in the dining room, sit up to the ceiling, very frustrated, and shouted at the top of my voice, "I can't find anybody to teach me." And I heard audibly, objectively, "We'll teach you. All you got to do is ask. You never asked, Tim." And immediately, what do I do? And then ask. And so me in the spirit world arranged that every day I would sit for an hour in a meditational state where they would come and teach me. So if you like, for want of a better description, I sat in a circle for 2 years, which I attended every day, never missed a day. There was 8 of us in that circle, I was the only physical living person.
Wow.
Everybody else in that circle was of the spirit, and they would just give me different experiences to the point where at the end of those 2 years, they said, well, okay, now we need to put it into practice. We want to introduce you to somebody. And this gentleman stepped forward from spirit and he said, I'm your next door neighbour's father. I think his name was John. My name is John, and I was a cobbler. And he gave some other information. And then the people in the circle said, now we want you to go and knock on your neighbour's door and tell them who you've been talking to. So, and that was the first time I introduced to the world that I was a medium.
Yeah.
I think by the age of about 23, 24, I did my first public demonstration, and it just unfolded from there.
Wow. Wow. What a story. How did your neighbours take that information?
I think at this time, you see, I lived in a very small hamlet in the Fenlands of Cambridge. Do you know that Fenlands of Cambridge is north of Cambridge?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so not far from Ealing, the city of Ealing, just out. Yeah. One of the little villages just outside Ealing. And I think he thought I was a bit weird. But, we'll exchange things like borrowing of lawnmowers. And I lived there for 2 years at this point. Yeah. So he kind of, although he thought I was weird and wacky, he accepted what I'd said, which was correct. I'm sure he'd come back indoors and said to his wife, hey, guess what this guy next door is telling me? But he accepted it, and typical Fen people, they talk that, you ask the time of day, maybe once a month, but yeah, it was good, it was cool, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first thing that jumps out at me straight away, spirit way your teachers. I mean, there's this whole debate whether I personally believe that's the best way to be taught.
So, I'm very lucky. You mentioned in the intro there that I'm very fortunate that I get to teach in different countries. And for some countries, there is no such thing as circles. Yeah. There are schools, there are centres where they have to pay a lot of money to go and be taught by people like myself. And they always say things like, you English students are very, very lucky because there's a circle on every corner, which there is these days. Yeah. However, I think they don't look beyond that. And my reply to that is, yeah, but not all of those circles or all of those classes in England are of the highest standard because there are so many. You guys here abroad are the lucky ones because you can't get to a circle. You are forced to go to the spirit world and be taught by spirit. And the best teachers, of course, are in the spirit world.
Yeah, absolutely. See, you made that relationship with the spirit world. For me, I wasn't quite lucky. I was a later developer. I came into mediumship in my late 20s, even though I was around spirit from an early age. By default, really, I lived next door to a lady who was a trance medium, and her son was my best friend. I would be in that energy, and Pam would often go into whispering spirit through and would talk about the spirit world to us. So I was kind of getting an education, but still, you can't be better taught than by spirit. In terms of your own development, when you made that leap from developing sitting with spirit to platform, that must have been, I mean, a lot of people develop, but they don't always go and do platform. What made you go that far?
So one of the things I always say to my students, you have to, every now and then, go and check yourself. And what I mean by that is ask yourself very honestly, why am I doing mediumship? And I think there are many different reasons. And it's somewhat like a spectrum with different degrees. And so maybe a bit of a degree will be because you want to earn some money, you want to do it professionally. Maybe it will be because you're looking for fame, you're in the wrong industry, but maybe some of it is your ego, you're driven by ego. And most definitely, the platform work was driven by ego. Some of my friends, fellow mediums, call me the peacock because I love to parade and, the glamour. But I was very fortunate that in my early days, I was taken under the wing by Glenn Edwards. He was my mentor. And I was in a group of 7 The other students actually used to call us the Magnificent Seven after that from the cowboy film, you know. And we had so many benefits by being in this inner circle of things, and we ran around with him not only at the Arthur Findlay College, but when he used to do seminars, we used to come and be, if you like, assistant tutors for him. And whenever I was very fortunate, but because out of the whole of the seven of us, me more than any of them, I would always demonstrate with him, public demonstrations at the college, outside of the college.
Yeah.
There was obviously something about my platform work that he admired, and I was always at the front of the queue for demonstrating with him. So I think that love of the platform, I think, was developed under his wing, and his desire and his love of being on the platform. Yeah, I think it bumped up on me a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. And also Glenn was very much involved with, obviously, Gordon Higginson. And I know there was a strong bond between Gordon and Glenn. And we're kind of going back into, I'm not saying pioneers, that's going way back, but we're going back into older mediumship. And we talk about older mediumship and how things have changed now. We had a little bit of a discussion before we went live. Can you tell us the difference of why you feel things have changed or believe things have changed?
So I like the way you actually presented that question to me, because I think to understand that change, we had to go back to people like Gordon's. And I live in the neighbourhood of, I live only 20 minutes away from where Gordon lives, so I know a lot of his friends. I know some of his family. I have coffee mornings with his family, so I know a lot of stories that maybe some people don't know. However, if we go back to like Glenn and Gordon's days, the emphasis on evidential mediumship was prove the communicator, take the communicator, prove the communicator. And that would be maybe in the 60s and 70s. As we moved into these, that emphasis shifted to the message. What is the communicator? Once you've proven the communicator, stop trying to prove the communicator. What's the message? Why Uncle Charlie come from the spirit world? What's he come to say? And the emphasis and the focus was on that. And now it's changed again in the 20s, if you like, to the client. So there's this new type of sitting that's it's been around maybe about 20 years, 15 years, called spiritual assessments. And that is where you look at the spiritual needs of the client whilst in the company of the spirit world. So you may have granddad with you. Sometimes it'll be done on a sensitive level, a psychic level. Sometimes it'll be done under the guidance of your guide. I do mine in chance. But another arrow to my bow, as it were. I'm an approved chance medium at the Arthur Findlay College. So a lot of my sittings, I'm there this Saturday on teaching on a chance course. Probably 90% of my sittings will be charts, spiritual assessments. So I will go into charts, my guide will come and talk to the client about the client, their life, their spiritual development, maybe some advice about where to move forward and how to move forward, maybe how to overcome and look at and address some challenges in their life. So the emphasis, if you like, is more modern style of mediumship. It's more focused on the client than the communicator. We still have to prove the communicator. Mediumship is mediumship at the end of the day. You know, to mediate from the spirit world. So you still have to prove you have that communicator. But then the focus is on the client. And I think modern mediumship also, Paul, is more flexible. It's more, I don't particularly like this word because I come from the old school, but I embrace modern mediumship very much so. It's more entertaining. And what I mean by that is, you know, not that the reverence of it has gone, but more to the forefront is the personality of the medium themselves. The mediumship is expressed through the personality. And we have some beautiful, wonderful personalities within the craft of mediumship these days, which people love. Not everybody's going to get a message, but everybody can be uplifted partly through the personality of the medium. Also, another more approach here to modern mediumship is you'll see a lot of young mediums, and I'm good with it. They have to be careful because of the laws of the land, but where they're amalgamating both the psychics and mediumship together, and they're bringing it together. So, for example, you may have somebody giving you a tarot card reading, and in the middle of the tarot card reading, they'll be giving reference to the Abbott in the spirit world. You never used to see that back in the days, where it's more of a regular phenomenon now.
No, see, I've got a question on that one, because for me personally, I think tarot cards can be a crutch anyway. And when I was taught back in the day, I was told that psychic is Latin. The word psychic or psyche is Latin for soul. So it kind of makes sense. And I think, so maybe that's the evolution of mediumship. Oh, that's a big word. The evolution of mediumship has become that. So it's not a process, in a negative process. And again, guys, this is just myself an opinion based. We'd love to hear your opinions, guys. Leave it in the comments below, and well, hopefully we can persuade Tim to come back on SBTV so you can ask Tim questions. But from my point of view, I'm thinking maybe that's a blend of the way society has gone as well. I mean, I remember the 80s. If you mentioned you were interested in mediumship, people were out the door and down the road. A lot of people thought you were crazy. Or
absolutely.
So I guess Gordon Higginson, Glenn Edwards, they very much had to prove real hard kind of people with ideas of that this stuff is real. So they really had to lock or dig deep with the evidence. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's another question on top of that. So have we also become a bit lazy? Because I see mediums that go one piece of evidence, bang, straight into giving the message. Is that enough?
So I'm quite often telling my students that they are lazy. Only on Tuesday, a class that I've been taking for 3 years, I told them that, hey, the next few weeks we're going to be looking at some of your skills, because some of you are not using your skills. You've become lazy. And I think we do. I think that the skills, so for example, the spiritual senses, remote viewing, interacting with the spirit world, with the communicator, I think those skills can become a little bit like a kitchen knife. While it's sharp, it's wonderful, a wonderful tool to use. But if you put it down and leave it in the bottom of the drawer, it will become blunt and musty, and it won't be very useful when you drag it out and out. So you've got to keep using it and keep it sharp. And so, absolutely, we can be lazy, and there are many skills to mediumship. So, for example, if we look at evidence, and again, for me, evidence is an expression of the intelligence of the communicating spirit. However, you and I are not one-dimensional. Our loved ones in the spirit world are not one-dimensional.
Absolutely.
So, if I said, Paul, I had your grandfather here. His name was Thomas. He died of a heart attack whilst on holiday in London at the age of 65. You go, that's amazing, Tim. Yes. Have we got to know your grandfather? Not at all. No. I've probably proven that I had your grandfather with me, with those facts, those bits of evidence, but we haven't got to know your grandfather. So I think, your grandfather is more than just evidence. You can read evidence out of a book, but you don't get to know the author, if that makes sense. So we've got to remember that people express themselves in a very factual manner, factual evidence, through emotional evidence, symbolic evidence, spiritual evidence, subjective, the opinion of the communicator. There's different ways that someone will express themselves to bring that depth into the being that they are, the individual that they are. And it's our jobs as mediums to express the whole of an individual, not just he died of a heart attack in London. He's more than that. Your grandfather was so much more than that.
Yeah. And I know, I believe personally my own mediumship is, some days I'm frustrated, other days it works bang on. It's just that I feel like I'm still evolving, and I always will be.
So I think Again, we have to look at the psychology within mediumship. But if we call it mental mediumship, which is a phrase that's somewhat getting left behind, but it's what it is. When we look at the science of mediumship, it works through the faculties of the mind. And then with that, whatever's happening within the mind and the consciousness will have an effect upon clarity of our mediumship. So we always have to have the attitude and the approach and embrace the attitude, but the potential and the opportunity to evolve within our mediumship will forever be there. There is no boundaries to communication.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an ongoing process that we have to be open to, I guess. I wanted to touch on a little bit about the spiritual side of a person and how that reflects. Now, in our industry, you see all different levels of people coming from all different, and that's not a judgment, of course. Horses for courses, everybody fits someone. But in terms of spirituality, that's where I think the rubber hits the road. It's really important. I believe that if we can try to be consciously trying to be a better person, I'm not saying we're walking around being St. Joseph or Mother Teresa. We just need to try to be better. Do you believe the two are linked?
Absolutely. So I think, first of all, mediums are human beings, our people. We have to remember that. We make mistakes. I've made some awful mistakes in my life, some of which every time we get out of bed in the morning, there is a day that is full of experiences. Some of those experiences we will regret. Some of them we will be very proud of for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And I'm no different to anybody else. I've certainly had experiences that I regret, mistakes I've made. Equally, there are things that I've achieved that I'm very proud of. And I think it's about moving through life, trying to evolve as a person without impinging in a negative way in the person who's journeying by the side of you, or your neighbour, or the person down the road. And I think as spiritualists, or as people evolving mediumistically, what we have to accept is that this life that we're journeying through is not just about healing ourselves as in physical and conscious, on a physical or conscious level. It's also taking responsibility of feeding and nurturing our spirit.
Yeah.
If we recognize that we are spirit incarnate, then we have to have responsibility for the well-being of that spirit. And some of our actions may, I don't know the science of this, but may reflect upon the spirit that we are. So it's not, I need to be a good person in life because I'll get a good seat on the bus to the spirit. Because then your intention is wrong.
Yeah.
Your intention should be, I want to be a good person because I just want to be a good person. It's just in my nature to be a good person. And again, just because you make mistakes in your life and go off that track somewhat, doesn't mean you can't come back onto it and make amends somewhat.
Yeah. And there, I mean, without going too biblical, there's a lot of stuff in the scriptures that talk about that. But I think I just got a speeding ticket. I was not happy. And I did cuss, I have to say. I wasn't happy, but it's not about that, is it? It is about, like you said, trying to do the right thing, trying to be a better person, reflecting and moving forward. But it can be difficult, and I think sometimes within our own, well, problem is, I have this problem with mediumship because I believe that the word medium, because I believe the human is a medium, that we're all able to connect, but we know who we're talking about when we talk about mediums, people that connect in this way. And I do feel that some people just don't understand that actually there is a part of this path that is about, there is a self-healing process, because I believe it's all about healing per se and about growth of you as a person. And it doesn't always seem that way, and the road is difficult and hard at times. but things do change. It's a difficult situation. All I'm trying to say is within the industry, I wish it's difficult, but I wish people were more spiritual. Does that make sense? And less judgmental.
It does. And I think if you're not spiritual, it doesn't mean you're not going to be a good medium.
Yeah.
However, I've met mediums who are, shall we say, less than spiritual, or they're focused more on their mediumship than their spiritual journey.
Oh.
I've tried, again, I've failed sometimes, but I've tried to develop the two at the same time. I'm probably focused more on the mediumship than the self, but and that's me trying to be honest there. But I think when you meet mediums who are clearly who don't care, who just don't care. But there's a shallowness to their mediumship. There's not depth, and I don't mean depth as in evidence. It can be as evidential as the next medium. But the presence of spirit, the depth of love, is somewhat missing within their mediumship. We have to be careful, though, that we don't judge people, because we don't know what their background stories. We don't know if we judge, I'm more spiritual than you, well, maybe there's a reason why I feel that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my problem. But I don't know what the person I'm judging, what they've gone through to restrict their spiritual development.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing I was going to come to. So I found within my own mediumship, I grew up in a very non-religious family. They went to church when someone died or got married, and that literally was it, Tim. So my parents were a very loving home, very much working class family, and I was kind of left on my own devices when it comes to my own, which I think, listening to other people's own journeys, I was quite blessed with that. But I never really had any belief. And I think on my mediumship journey, I found a creator, that essence of spirit that drives us forward. How would you encourage people that are developing to find that love, that essence, that connection? Is there anything that we could do to help us on you've discovered, or for people starting up especially?
So for me, and again, I don't believe that someone who doesn't go to church, and you mentioned that a lot of your family members didn't go to church on a regular basis. I don't believe that does not mean they're not spiritual.
Yeah.
A father can be very spiritual, yet never walk into church because he's too busy plowing his fields. Yet he's at one with Mother Nature and the seasons. But I do believe that for me, I was very, very fortunate that, again, in my early days as a student, studying at the Arthur Findlay College, which I was directed to go there by the Spirit World, by the way. I met a Swami. There was a Swami who worked at the Arthur Findlay College. Gordon Higginson asked her to come and teach because it was clear that she could manipulate and work with and harvest a spiritual energy. And she took a lot of interest in my development, and I used to have a lot of one-to-one classes with her. I was very fortunate. And so I fell in love with meditation.
Yeah.
And I truly believe if you're going to develop as a human being as well as a medium, meditation, you can achieve so much with the practices of meditation. Let me tell you very briefly, how can we as media do justice to somebody who's, for example, taken their own life?
Yeah.
We've never experienced taking our own life.
Yeah.
Well, in meditation, you could experience that through the power of meditation. How can we do justice to a lady who has to go and prostitute her body on the streets to feed her children, and who is now in the spirit world? How can we do justice to the work that she had to do as a mother if we'd never done prostitution? We can achieve that in meditation. There's nothing we cannot achieve or experience within meditation and have it presented to us by our guides. And so that when we in mediumship and that mother comes and says, "Hey, I had to be a prostitute so I could feed my children," we can present it in a professional manner with the love that lady deserves. And that person who took their own life We can present it in a professional manner because we can appreciate it because we touched on it through the power of meditation.
Yeah.
And if we look at the mechanics, very briefly look at the mechanics of meditation. You go into meditation, you're going into an altered state of consciousness. Well, you have to go into an altered state of consciousness to do mediumship.
Yes.
Within meditation, or certain types of meditations, you'll experience the spiritual senses, clairvoyance, clairsentience, which there, as you know, there are 6 of. Well, you have to experience them within mediumship. In some forms of meditation, you will have somebody come and join you from the spirit world. Every time you do mediumship, you have to have somebody come and join you from the spirit world. So actually, meditation is somewhat like taking your mediumship to the gym and giving it a word, where you can experience love, hate, summer, winter, day, night, all the positives, all the negatives, if you will, are within life, so that there is a depth and a clarity within your mediumship and indeed within your life as a human being.
Yeah.
But for me, I would recommend meditation.
Yeah. While we're on this subject, Tim, what type specifically, because some people like guided, some people like listening to, I've actually got one of Glenn's guided meditation in my bookshelf. And
Cool.
he's a very, I mean, I was never blessed to meet the man, but I'll tell you a story after we come off air, because I had a story on Glenn, but yeah, I mustn't forget that. I'll edit this bit out, or I might keep it in. People like to know these things, but basically, people have problems with meditation. People say, I can't meditate. Is there an essential ingredient to meditation?
So there's 3 main ingredients or ways to approach meditation. And I think it normally differs depending on where you are at in your journey of development.
Yeah.
So the 3 that I'm going to give you, one may suit a beginner, one may suit an advanced, but that's not necessarily the guideline. A guided meditation, as you've just suggested, an external, like a teacher guiding you through a meditation, or an audio tape or CD, something like that. And that's always very good for things like beginners to be guided by.
Yeah.
And it helps you to focus and strengthen that point of focus.
Yeah.
The second is to take yourself through a meditation. So you may design a meditation. So you may say, for example, okay, I want to strengthen my spiritual senses. So I'm going to design a meditation where I go walk through a town. I can see clothes in a shop. So I can hear children shouting in a park. I can smell the butcher's shop and the fish and chip shop. So you're using all your senses, and then you design that in your head, and then you go through the process of doing that meditation as natural as possible. So you're taking yourself through it. And the third way, which a lot of advanced students will do, is you simply sit in the quietness and the stillness of your mind and invite your guide to step forward and take you on a journey where they want to take you, or where they feel you would be best, or what experiences you would be best to experience, depending on what's going on in your life or your mediumship at that particular time.
Yeah. I mean, the guided would help those for people that say they can't sit, they can't meditate, they
absolutely.
can't find the time. And the problem with that is if you can't find the time, I mean, I've said, I don't know if you agree with this, that sometimes you can have other types of meditation, like being present in the garden. Would that be the same level? So
if I'm hearing what you're saying, right, I'll just get this in my head right, Paul. Are you saying being in the garden as opposed to observing the garden?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? What I mean, in terms of, I know people that are mindfully doing the garden. So they're feeling the earth. They're putting the pot in the plant in the soil. They're being present. They're being aware of the energy around without having to close their eyes. Walking on the grass, being in the garden, connecting that way. Is that equally as good?
So I mean, and that's a beautiful way of doing a meditation. So there are 2 levels there. You can do a meditation where you observe yourself. So you say, So a teacher, for example, will say that visualize yourself in a lane, in a country lane, and they will actually visualize an image of themselves in the country lane. And if they see themselves in the country lane, they can't be in the country lane.
Yeah.
Or they can be in the country lane, as you suggest, be in the garden. They're not visualizing themselves in the garden, they're in the garden.
Yeah.
And that takes it to another, if you like, level of reality within your consciousness.
Yeah.
But also I think we need to look at, Paul, that there are different types of meditation. Meditation is a very umbrella statement for these spiritual practices. There is meditation, there is visualization, there is contemplation, relaxation, sitting in the power, and they're all different types of meditation. Depending on what you're looking at within your mediumship, you should choose one of those.
Yeah.
It'd be a bit too long-winded for me to go through them, but hey, your prescribers would just have to come onto one of my lectures about the value and importance of meditation.
Well, you do. Where can we find your lectures, Tim? Are they online?
There are a couple online, absolutely, that have been downloaded there. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
You can. I think there's 3 or 4 floating around somewhere.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Great stuff. Also, you do a couple of exercises I've noticed on your website where you help beginners, intermediate, and advanced. I've noticed that. So that guys.
So I've listened to books. In my laziness, we come back to lazy mediums. They are both the same title. Mediumship Raising the Standards, exercise book 1, Mediumship Raising the Standards, exercise book 2. Book 1 was the best-selling mediumship book on eBay in 2014. The second one was a flop. If I'm going to massage my ego, we've still got equally got to be honest. But they're both good books. They're exercise books. There's lectures, and I think there's about 40 exercises in each book, with also some stories about my experiences. And as you rightly say, within those exercises, I talk you and guide you through the exercises. Some are designed for beginners, some for intermediate, some for advanced. You can't get a hard copy anymore. I'm not thinking of it. I've moved on from that. But you can. They're £5, and you can have them as a download.
Oh, brilliant.
From my website.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a great idea. And it gives people the opportunity to practice at home. But do you reckon or recommend a simple exercise a beginner could do?
If I can put it a slightly different way for you, Paul,
Yes, please.
I recommend an attitude.
Oh.
So I was teaching, many years ago, I was teaching at the college in the sanctuary, if you know the Arthur Finley College, I'm sure some of your listeners will. And I'd just done a class, it was a wonderful class, and they'd gone off to lunch. And I just thought, I just need to sit and talk to one of my guides, because I just want to ask my guide to give me something that will really elevate the quality of my students' mediumship. And so I sat and I asked my guide, and my guide's answer was, well, that's very simple, Tim. Tell your students, tell your hearers to stop looking to mend, to take away the cancer. Tell them to stop trying to take away the cancer. Tell your philosophers to stop trying to get the best philosophy in the world. Tell your evidential mediums to stop trying to get the wow factor, the telephone numbers, the full names. Tell them to stop trying to do that. Because that's what we're finding in the spirit world today. But the students of mediumship are putting the evidence before the spirit world, the communicator.
Yeah.
They're looking for the evidence. They're not looking for the communicator. Look for the presence of spirit, and all the evidence they desire will come. So it's about not trying to be good, which modern mediumship actually encourages somewhat.
Yeah.
But trying to be, when we come back to the spiritual bit, just trying to be in the company of the spirit. And it's through the company of the spirit that the evidence you desire within your mediumship will come. So put the spirit first and the evidence second. and you'll be an evidential medium.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. That is a great philosophy. I love that. And oh my gosh, Tim, honestly, I could be here asking you 1,000 questions all day. It's like I say, you've got so much experience, you've been through so much yourself, and like I say, you're a trance medium. Have we got time to touch on a little bit of philosophy? Do you mind if we touch on a little bit of philosophy? And because the modern catchphrase is, a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't do philosophy. I don't like philosophy." Why are people moving away from philosophy? You can't even say it properly.
I will happily do philosophy. I'm not going to sit here and go into trance, but I will allow my spirit to inspire me. You know, I think sadly, we live in a very materialistic world. And we have to. We have to because it's a very challenging world. You know, there's a lot of young people under a lot of pressure, which is why, you know, I live in the Midlands, so I'm about 45 minutes away from Birmingham. And sadly, we're hearing at least once a week of young males, 14, 15 years of age, dying where they're being stabbed.
Yeah.
Where young people feel the need to be in gangs, and I come from the west side of town, so I've got to attack you because you come from the east side of town.
Yeah. And
we're in this very judgmental world. And again, I come back to having the privilege of working around, certainly around Europe a lot with my work. And I was in Manchester Airport a couple of years ago now, and you know, and you go into where all the shops are, and you wait till your gate comes up, and then you go to the gate, and you show your passport, your boarding pass, and then you go into another seating area. And I went into that area, and there was 2 rows of chairs facing each other. And it was on a hot summer's day, and there was a guy, maybe in his 30s or 40s, quite a big chap, bald head like me, lots of tattoos like me, but he was wearing shorts and Dr. Martin boots and showing. And so I went and sat opposite him, and I was admiring his artwork, his tattoos. And he caught my eye, and I said, "I'm sorry, mate, I'm looking at your artwork. You've got some really good artwork going on." And so we were talking about the art of tattooing and how it's become so good in modern days, the artwork of it. And he said, "Have you noticed that no one else is coming and sitting over here?" And over in the corner, there were lots of people mingling around in a corner, but there was vacant seats either side of me and this chap, but no one would come and sit down. And he said, "I did it all the time because of my appearance."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, that's it dawned on me straight away, but people was judging this man."
Yeah.
He said, "What do you think I do for a living?" And I thought, "Oh, here we go. I've got to do some mediumship." I said, I don't know. I haven't got a clue." He said, "I'm an undercover policeman. I'm an undercover policeman." And he said, "You see those people who are too scared to come and sit beside me? My job is to make sure they sleep safe in their bed at night, but they choose to judge me. They choose to judge me." And he said something to me in that moment that I will never ever forget. He said, "You know, something I've learned in my work is that every saint has a past. Every criminal has a future."
Yeah.
And it is so true.
Yeah.
It is so true. And we've got to be careful that we don't judge people on their appearance or their ability or lack of ability as a me. Everybody loves a good me. "Oh, he's a wonderful man. He's wonderful."
Yeah.
But you don't know him. You've only seen him demonstrate. You're judging him because he gave you a pretty message. He may be a terrible person, but you think he's wonderful because he gave you a pretty message from your grandmother. Yeah. And so we have to be careful. And I remember, you know, I don't remember because I wasn't there, but something that a lot of people don't realise. You know, we talk about modern mediumship, and we think of 1848, the 31st of March, the Fox sisters, and the events that unfolded and brought about the birth of modern mediumship. But what a lot of people don't realise, on the very same day, about 300 miles away, there was some other phenomena to a gentleman called Andrew Jackson Davis, who has become known as the grandfather of spiritualism.
Yeah.
And he woke up in the morning, and he wrote in his diary something like the following, and I'm not going to get it right, so please don't quote me on this, about dawn today, a warm breath came about my face, and I heard a voice saying, tender and strong, behold, a living demonstration has been born.
Wow.
I don't believe for 1 minute the spirit world was talking about the Fox sisters in that moment. I believe the spirit world was talking about every medium who stands on a platform and demonstrates, every medium that gives a one-to-one sitting, every medium that sits and debates and discusses mediumship like you and I are right now, so other people can learn. That's what I believe the spirit world was talking about. And so for me, I say this in finishing this little bit of philosophy. I say this to people. I don't care if you're a healer, if you're a medium, if you're a trance medium, if you're a spiritualist. If you're a teacher of mediumship, go and do it, but be good.
Yeah.
The spirit world deserve that.
Yeah.
If you're a medium, go and do it, but be good. The spirit world deserve that. If you're a spiritualist, go and attend your churches. The spirit world deserve that. If you're a healer, go and heal and be good. The spirit world deserve that. And together, let's take this philosophy that life is eternal to another level.
But for some
you very
people,
much.
but thank you, Tim, for that. But for some people, they really struggle with delivering philosophy or even understanding why we need it.
So I struggled at the beginning as a young man. I struggled, and there's a beautiful lady. She's still alive. She's quite mature lady now, for sure. She used to be head of education for the DSNU, and she came to me one day and she said, young man, I've been observing you for the last few years, and you are excelling in all areas of mediumship apart from one. And I thought, here we go, philosophy. She said, you run away from philosophy. I said, no, I don't even know what the word means. And she said, it's so simple, Tim. You've got to break it down. What it means is your truth, your outlook on life. So it doesn't need to be highfalutin, very educated, highbrow words, like what Glenn Edwards will have used, bless him. He was a very educated man. You can be a very uneducated man like me and use words that are relevant to you that express your truth. And it's not about being afraid if people disagree with your philosophy. The art of philosophy, spiritual philosophy, is to encourage people to go away and think about your truth to see if it can enrich their truth. And if it does, then it's done its job. If it doesn't, hopefully another medium's philosophy will enrich their truth. We won't all agree, but the one thing we do agree on is the reality of the spirit world. So have your truth, and in having your truth, you have your philosophy.
I mean, I've done quite a lot of services and I've spoken to quite a few people, especially in spiritual centers, but the spiritual centers don't always expect philosophy from their mediumship. But I mean, from my experience, when philosophy works well, and it is about coming from the heart, and I have a problem speaking from my heart because I'm a very private person, and especially if you don't have great confidence, you don't have a lot of self-worth. So for some people, that's really difficult. How do we, I mean, is there, for yourself, you said you kind of avoided it, and I can resonate with that. I've avoided it at times, but now I understand the process. It is about coming from the heart, from your experience.
Well, I think there's 3 ways of approaching it.
Okay.
And as you say, some people are more open than others. I love philosophy now, love sharing philosophy. But I'll tell you how I do it in a moment. But again, there's 3 main ways of doing it. You either do it, and there's no rules to say, you can't do it that way. You've got to do it this way. You can do it from your consciousness.
Yeah.
So very much from, and a lot of what I've just said, that little bit of philosophy I did for you, a lot of it was from my own consciousness. You can allow your spirit, in the same way that we do a prayer, you can allow your spirit to inspire you with thoughts and philosophy, or you can invite your guide, not to go into trance, but you can invite your guide to come close to inspire you with the spirit world's philosophy. and it's finding, and I would recommend that people practice all three to see which one suits you. And all three of them are equally good quality-wise. It's just what technique suits you.
Yeah.
For me, I do the third one. I allow my guide to come close. Again, I'm not going into trance, but I'm allowing my guide to come close to inspire me. So, and sometimes I'll get off the platform and think, well, that phrase was good. Well, I never thought about that before. Well, you wouldn't have done, Tim, because it was the thoughts of your comment. But there's something I need to share with you, Paul, that maybe your listeners need to know. It's actually a legal requirement, certainly in spiritualism, to do philosophy. And I'll tell you why. In 2013, Lord Tolson brought in a judgment saying that for any religion to hold the status of religion within their religious services, there has to be an element of education. And for us as spiritualists on our divine service, that's where you will find the education is within the philosophy. So it's actually a legal requirement for us to do philosophy.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of spiritual or independent centers have started up, and they don't necessarily. Some do, and it's great, but some don't always. They don't ask the medium to do that if they don't want to. But I think that, for me personally, I think the medium themselves are missing a trick if they don't do it.
There's a difference. There's a difference between a demonstration of mediumship and a divine service.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I think without the philosophy moves you into the presence of the spirit. I've noticed when I've demonstrated to the public, I'm working at this is a bit of a plug for Wyndham Football Club. They do a lot of charity nights to keep the club running. So I'm a football man, so it's right to my heart. So but the difference and the level is completely different. I always personally believe that the depth of my mediumship is better when I'm in church.
Yeah, and I think it's horses for courses. I think there are, for example, there are theatre mediums and there are church mediums. And again, it doesn't mean one's better than the other, but there are different way of presenting the mediumship. Yeah. So when I do demonstrations abroad, because I do lots of seminars abroad, and quite often part of that will be a public demonstration. I wouldn't do philosophy and I wouldn't talk about the seven principles because, or normally, sometimes I'll put it in there, but because spiritualism is a lot of these students abroad are looking to develop their mediumship, but not necessarily looking to develop their spiritualism. That doesn't mean they're not spiritual people, but they're not looking to become spiritualists or evolve as spiritualists. So I don't push spiritualism down their throat, as it were. Yeah. But if I do a divine service, which I still do here in England, absolutely I will be. I love prayer. To be in the company of God, that divine spirit. I love that prayer. And prayer is, of course, part of philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just something for me that I've noticed, and it's been a weaker side of me in terms of doing philosophy. And it's something that's taken probably the last thing that I've worked on too, which is quite interesting. But it's important, and it's important.
I think absolutely. And I think one of the easiest techniques for somebody who's starting with philosophy is what you find. I used to do it, and when I used to talk to fellow students, they were doing the same thing. So you may have, for example, it's Monday, and you think, oh, on Sunday I have a divine service. I've got to think about the philosophy. So on Monday you think, I'll talk about love within the family, the physical family and the spiritual family. That's it. Yeah. Tuesday comes, no, I'm going to talk about Mother Nature. Wednesday comes, you think, no, I'm going to talk about God. Thursday comes, and you think, hang on a minute, I'm confused here. So what I would recommend is you talk about something that is close to your heart, but think of a subject matter, for example, the brotherhood of man, the fatherhood of God. Think of one subject matter and then stay with that and get it some thought. So you've got like a skeleton. I would recommend you don't write it down because that then becomes too mechanical and too conscious. But have a skeleton in your mind of what you want to talk about. And then you will find that your spirit or the spirit will put the body onto that skeleton. Yeah. If you look at, you can go online and look at, there are competitions for public speaking. They have world championships in public speaking.
Wow.
And if you look at, if you go on their sites, they all have the same structure. And the structure is they start with a question. So let's say, for example, you start with a question of philosophy. And my question may be to a congregation, ladies and gentlemen, why are you here? And the reason I'm asking that is because I want to talk about God, being in the company of God. Why are you here? And I might follow that by saying, some of you may be here to get a pretty message, and some of you may be here because it's going to become like a social club. But my philosophy is about being in the company of God. And then what you find is these public speakers, I mean, these are world-class public speakers. They will then tell a little story, like the story I told about the Manchester airport and the undercover policeman. Don't be judgmental. If people are like, I may follow why you here with that story, and then say something like, we need to see the spirit within each other, which leads me on to God and being in the company of the God. So I always recommend that you start with a question, a very small story, then get to your point. Always finish your philosophy where you started it. I started it by saying, why are you here? I would finish it by saying, once again, ladies and gentlemen, why are you here? Hopefully to be in the company of God. And finish it at that. So when you finish it where you start it, it almost ties it all up into one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found that it started to help me grow with my mediumship as well. So certainly I would recommend it to people to, even if you don't want to do it, try. And there's never any judgment around these things. And I just think it's really important.
We know, bless them, these vicars, these priests, they practice their sermon. They don't get up and do it off the cuff on a Sunday afternoon. They look in the mirror, in the bathroom, and they'll be going through some of their sermon before they arrive to church. Practice in your mirror. It doesn't have to be anybody there, so you're not going to be embarrassed. Practice in your mirror, and then you'll get some idea of where you need to polish it, where you need to shape it a little bit to suit your philosophy, your truth.
Can I ask you though, Tim, in terms of sorry, we've been going for over an hour already. I'll make this quick. There's two other things I'd like to ask you. Firstly, the process of demonstrating and bringing through evidence of life, in terms of bringing a loved one through, how does that mix work? Do you look for 2, 3, or 4 points of evidence, then bring a message?
No, okay. No, so the way I teach students and the way I only teach through experience. So I teach students to do mediumship the way I do it, and that doesn't mean be a copy of Tim Abbott. I actually encourage them not to do that. But I talk about the skills and the tools that I use. So I will look for that's wrong. That phrase is wrong. I will expect. That means I'm not, because the minute you're looking for evidence, the minute you're chasing evidence, you're too involved. You're consciously too involved. So I will expect, and again, this is where meditation comes in, because I will have spoke to my guides. These are the types of things I want. So I don't go looking for it, yet my guides know that this is the type of evidence Tim wants. I want very factual, clear evidence. What we have to remember is, when you're talking to a client, the client can only digest mentally what they hear you say. They're not mediums. They're not sort of measurable. They're not saying, oh, I can see my grandma because I'm a medium. They're saying, I ain't got a clue you've got, I'm not a medium. That's why I've come to you. So they're reliant on what you say. So when you say things like, there's lots of light around you, I mean, I haven't got a clue what that means. So I know my client They're sitting there very confused, so they're probably going to say, no, I don't know. So make those first maybe 6 seconds very, very clear. So, for example, who is it? And I don't think that should be your first statement. So I think my normal routine would be, because it's very natural now, I don't go looking for it again, would be, what sector is? So I have a man with me here. That means that cuts out 50% of the people in the spirit world that you know. All the ladies, forget about them. I only want you to think about a man. I may give a very loose description, because description actually has less value than what people think it is.
Yeah.
Because if you ask 10 of your clients, tell me the exact height of your grandfather, they'd probably say, I ain't got a clue. All I know is he was tall. All I know is he was short. All I know is he was slim, he was large, whatever it is. Yeah. So I may give a very loose description after I've got an elderly man with me here. A loose description. I might put a loose age on that. And I would probably expect to get something like what kind of job they did or how they passed. And then I maybe say, you need to look in your family for this, or put a title on it. This is your dad, this is your boss, this is your neighbour, this is your best friend. Put a title on them. So I'm helping my client with precise information to help me, if that makes sense. Yeah. Once my client is happy, and they should be happy after about 6 or 8 statements, I then will do what I call additional evidence. What we have to think about, Paul, is who am I pleasing, or who is the spirit world pleasing? Or I say, my dad, I died of a heart attack in London, by the way, I'm the carpenter. Who are they pleasing by saying that? Because he knows his dad. He knows he was a carpenter. He doesn't have to prove it. But he's making the client happy, but he's also making the medium happy. You think of when your client says yes to you, what goes on in your head. You will go, oh, brilliant, I've got it right. And at that point, the communicator has you, the medium, where they want you. So then they can do what we call additional evidence. So they can tell stories, they can do some remote viewing, they can get maybe something from their history. Because what we also need to remember is, before that sitting started, the communicator knew what the message was going to be. They know why they've come to talk to their cousin before the sitting started. So after you've proven who they are, then they will start giving subtle bits of evidence that is leading the medium to the message. For example, they may talk about their brother-in-law who was the bank manager and how they used to go for drinks with him every Friday night. The only reason they're mentioning that is because they won't talk about their granddaughter, your client's finances, bank finances. They're leading the medium's mind towards those subject matters of finances. So when it comes to the message, the medium's already in that gear, mental gear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And that's really important. And there's not an expectation, but there is an expectation from the audience. You know, but it's kind of finding that right balance where like I said, at the top of the show, I said some mediums, and I find, forgive me for saying this, guys, some international mediums do this, is they'll give 1 or 2 pieces of evidence and straight into a message. Is that because they know who they've got and they're happy to give that, or is it, I don't know, is it laziness? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I can't judge other mediums, but I would say that so there is a big difference between evidence and information. So for me to say, I need to come to you, Paul, I have your grandfather with me here. So I have your grandfather, and your grandfather's telling me that you're going through a tough time. That does not prove that I had your grandfather.
Yeah.
That does not prove that I had your grandfather. And we see in our churches a lot of, so we've got to bring the personality, the presence, the information that is stored within this. Your grandfather's right. Your grandfather was. I'm just making a scenario here, of course. Your grandfather was 85 when he died. Most mediums talk about the last couple of weeks of a communicator. So I can see him in hospital. He's dying of cancer. His wife's holding her hand. He had 85 years of experience. Why are we not going to talk about that?
Yeah.
Because there's a wealth of information there that we can tap into that tells beautiful stories, that brings grandfather alive. Our job as mediums is to bring the communicator alive, because they are alive. And one-worded statements, which we see a lot, you can understand August as an anniversary, August being the one word. That is not evidence, it's information. Even if it's correct, it's not an expression of the intelligence of grandfather. Grandfather would not say August. He would say, I was born on the 20th of August, 1965.
Yes.
That's what he would say.
Yeah, I agree 100%. 100%. Tim, it's been a privilege to interview. Thank you for giving up your time. I'm hoping to get
It's been
you
a joy,
on.
Paul.
It's been a privilege for me, and we're hoping to get you live on SBTV, and a big shout out to Richard because his broadband's not up and running yet. But there's one last question, if you don't mind, Tim, before we go.
By all means, by all means.
What is it within mediumship that we're not talking about that we should be?
Okay. For me, that's an easy one. It's one that's very raw for me, actually. So, and again, hopefully you can see that I'm an honest guy. I can be a little bit of a rogue sometimes, so I'm very honest. One of the things that I am lavish at within my mediumship, if I bumped into you in the street and I said, "Oh, hello, Paul, what are you doing?" You said, "Oh, my daughter just died 3 days ago," I would be rubbish. In that scenario, I would be absolute rubbish. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear mediumship. Within a few days, I lost a daughter over 20 years ago now, but it's still raw. I lost a daughter at the age of 21. She had a son who was 2 years old, my grandson. She moved into a house about 6 months, and she died of an epileptic fit. I don't get it. I think if someone else was in that scenario, I wouldn't know what to say to them. 8 months ago, my wife was fighting cancer, lung cancer. She went through the terrible operation of having her lung removed and having to get over that. She was clear of cancer 2 weeks and died of pneumonia 7 months ago. She died of pneumonia. I don't get it. I don't know the answer to that. And if somebody stood in front of me and told me that story about their wife, I would not have the answer. So one of the things I think we are missing out on is classes of one form, and I couldn't do it because I'm not an expert. I know one person, Liddy Clark, the beautiful minister Liddy Clark, who teaches counsellors how to be counsellors.
Wow.
We don't have enough counsellors in grief counselling. We don't have enough of that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people will come into spiritualism not for mediumship. They will come into spiritualism because they are in pain, because they have lost a loved one.
Yeah.
And they need to just sit down and talk to somebody. We haven't got enough people. We've got loads of people who think they are counsellors. I'll probably include myself in that. But we haven't got enough people who are expert in counselling for grief. And that's one of the things we should be focusing on.
Because thank you for that answer, because that is something that I struggle with, and a lot of mediums struggle with, because people, I think we can get a bit blasé in terms of people come with can want to connect with their loved ones. Of course, they want to connect with their loved ones, and there's a healing process in that. But we kind of get a bit blasé. We are used to connecting with spirit. We can sometimes be a little bit, I don't want to use the word blasé, but it's kind of what it is with death. I mean, you can develop a different kind of mindset with that if we're not careful. I know firemen, I used to be a part-time fireman, and firemen can do that when they've been pulling out children from car crashes, and they have to have a different, or else they'll take it home to their own children. But there is this sense that we don't understand grief enough. And I think we can give a message for 5 minutes, and a wonderful message, especially when we're demonstrating. Give a wonderful message. Got Dad here, Richard, who lived in Littleport. He was this. Great, thank you. I'll leave you love with you and move on to. You've just really shaken that person up, and they've got a great that they've felt that. But it's just, you know, is it enough?
Absolutely. But you're right, Paul. We have a philosophy about that. And I think it's a very healthy philosophy. But not everybody is like you or I. Not everybody is a spiritualist or has the philosophy of a spiritualist.
Yeah.
That there are people from all walks of life who don't understand death. Some philosophies understand death or embrace death a lot better than what spiritualism does. But some people very much are fearful of death. Will come in to talk to a medium maybe. Do mediums have this? Mediums have the skill to communicate with the deceased, but do they have the skills to communicate with the people who are suffering because of the deceased?
Absolutely.
I don't think we do. On the whole, of course there are some who do, but on the whole, I don't think we do. And I think it should be part of our development.
Yeah.
To have some skills to nurture people who are in pain, who are broken.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I also send our condolences on the loss of your wife? I know I interviewed Craig Morris. Hi, Craig, if you're watching, recently, and he said, I mean, I was never fortunate enough to meet you before today, Tim, or your wife, we just want to send our condolences from everyone here at Spiritual Talk to you, and we're sorry for your loss.
That's very time again. We're at 7 months now, so we're picking ourselves up. But you know, especially me and my youngest daughter, we still have tough days, you know, and we still need to be held. And so there are some days that are very happy and full of life, and there's some days that are very down and very almost depressive. And there are days when I'm aware of her and days when I'm not aware of her. I was thinking today, hey, I haven't heard from Jeanette for a little while. Hey, Jeanette, come on, I need to hear from you. I need to be held by you. You know? So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tim, it's been such a privilege. As I said, and we can't thank you enough for coming on. Hopefully we can get you on live soon, so you guys can ask your questions.
That, mate.
That'll be great. But for now, we want to say thank you very much, and we will hopefully see you very, very soon. Take care, guys, and thanks everybody for watching. Well, we've got some fabulous interviews coming up, so don't forget Spiritual Talk TV. That's where it's at.